Do you think those two episodes of Horseland I came across were bad enough? Well, you are going to want to think again. The next episode I found centered around anger problems. Some scenes were almost entirely similar to that anger management episode of Teletubbies that Typical Studios encountered. It was a Saturday afternoon and I was playing Little Big Planet Free on my PS4 while roaming around the Mangle world as Sackboy. I got a knock at my door and my grandma entered and handed me a DVD as a gift. What I noticed what she had gotten me was a strange Horseland DVD. The cover consists of Sarah Whitney crying with Chloe and Zoe next to her. It was rather strange as I didn't know why Chloe and Zoe were angry at Sarah. But anyways, the DVD was titled Horseland, The Big Parade and Other Episodes. Of all these DVDs I have seen of Horseland, I have always had lost episodes. But since it was a Horseland DVD, I put it into my excitement, and the first DVD started with some previews for other shows like the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, Caillou, and Trolls. It took me in the menu like always. The menu had a picture of what looked like the whole Horseland gang, all carrying flags for the episode, The Big Parade. The options were Play All, Episode Selection, and Setup. I selected Play All, and sat through the first 3 episodes, The Big Parade, The Molly and Chili, and A True Gift. All of them were pretty good. But as I was expected, there was a lost episode. Unfortunately, it didn't start off with the warning, unlike the other lost episodes. It just went straight to the intro. By the time the intro ended, it then showed what happened in the episode. It was nothing special, as it was just mostly consists of Sarah Whitney standing up next to Alma with her at Horseland crying. Heck, this shot was very similar to the Horseland episode known as the Whispering Gallery. No other scenes were present. A voice happened to sound like Hug Laurie said, "Today on Horseland, something is not right with Sarah. She's in a bad mood and she won't tell anyone why. Can Sarah's friends help her cheer her up? Or will Sarah take it too far?" The title of the episode was Sarah's Anger. The episode started with Shep standing in front of the sign for Horseland and then faced the camera, just like in the last episode I saw. He said, "There are 5 stages in the grieving process: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance." I found it really odd for Shep to say something like that. It almost sounded like it came from the Blue's Clues story, Sorrow. Shep then continued on by saying, "Sarah has gone through this, but it wasn't very good. The story you're about to hear is quite brutal." Then, the scene then cuts in the episode arena at the Horseland stable. Sarah tied her horse to the railing, and what happened next was strange. Sarah then proceeded to walk up close to the camera, which nearly made me jump. Heck, there was even no background music playing, just the sounds of the birds chirping and Sarah's footsteps. She then said, "Something's wrong with me, and I don't know what. It's terribly hard to explain." She then walked away and sat at the bench. Sarah put her hands over her eyes and began to cry, just like the episode Anger Management episode from Teletubbies that Typical encounter. It wasn't the cartoonish way. It sounded like as if Sarah was actually in the feeling of true sorrow, probably realistic. Not to be cliched or anything, but it also sounded like if her actor Diana Dolan was in a really bad mood. The scene then went on for a minute or two. Eventually, Alma would recognize this and go over to Sarah. "Hey Sarah, whatever is the matter?" Alma asked. Sarah then stopped crying for a moment and replied with, "Alma, I don't know why I'm in a bad mood today, but it'd probably be best if you don't question this, please." Sarah then continued to cry while Alma said, "Okay, I'll leave you alone for now, and I hope you could find a cure for happiness later on." Alma then walked away as she proceeded to take Button out back to her stall. After doing so, she proceeded to call out the rest of the Horseland gang by saying, "Guys, can I have your attention, please?" "What is it?" Chloe asked. "Sarah is in a really bad mood and doesn't want to talk to anyone right now. So if you ever see her, leave her be. Does everyone understand?" Alma asked. "Yes, but how come she's in a bad mood?" Will asked. "She doesn't know why," Alma replied. It then showed a scene with Shep, Teeny, and Angora. They were all walking around the arena while discussing about what has been going on with Sarah. "You know, if us animals could talk, maybe I could cheer Sarah up with a funny joke," Teeny said. "That's probably one way, but for now, we just need to leave Sarah alone," Shep replied. Meanwhile, Will noticed that Sarah had left Scarlet out for quite some time. He then took out a piece of paper and wrote down a note on it. Will put it near Sarah, who was in the middle of sulking. Sarah picked up the paper and said this: I'll take care of Scarlet for you while you try to calm down. I would have told you by voice, but I know how you feel. Kind regards, Will. After doing so, it cuts to a next scene. We see the cafeteria being seen in the big parade. Sarah, Molly, Chloe, Zoe, Alma, and Bailey all sat down together. I could see that Sarah did not take a bite out of her food, probably because she was not hungry at all, but still had a tray of food with her anyway. Sarah, you barely touched your... Bailey's sentence then got interrupted by Sarah saying, Bailey, not now. But Sarah, maybe your hunger is causing all these... Again, Sarah interrupted Bailey, shouting in an angry manner, I said get away from me! She then said that. It reminded me of just one of that scene from Team America World Police, where Gary's at the bar, and some person asked Gary to do one scene from a musical he was in. Okay, sorry, Bailey said in a scared tone. Then he backed away from Sarah. Bailey, amigo, I thought we told you about what happened to Sarah, Alma said to Bailey. Yeah, I know. I completely forgot about it, Bailey said. Sarah, however, finally proceeded to take a bite of what was on her tray. Chloe tried to say that Sarah was beginning to eat, but was stopped by Alma telling her to zip it. Zoe then began to sing a rude song. She sang, Sarah hates everyone, yes she does. She hates them and she hates you. The song she sang reminded me of the song whenever my dad sings whenever he gets into a problem with people on the road, and when I'm with him on the car. And then a loud bang on the table was made, scaring Zoe and the gang. Sarah was extremely angry, and she shouted, Will you people just shut the fuck up? Your voices are not helping me out here. Molly then said, Please, Sarah, this was all a big mistake. Well, then, the worst thing I ever saw in Horseland happened. Sarah shouted to Molly, Will you shut the hell up, you piece of shit? Her insult was interrupted by a few seconds of a music video by the Wiggles. The song was put in particular was Uncle Noah's Ark. I found that really disappointing because 1, the Wiggles were not owned by Deke or Cookie Jar at all, and 2, I didn't even find that scene funny. The song lasted for about 10 seconds before showing the cafeteria again with Zoe, Alma, Chloe, and Bailey all gasping in shock. Molly could be seen shredding to tears, likely because of what she was called. You idiots don't just want to torture me for fun, don't you? Well, you just did, Sarah said while crying. She then ran out of the room still crying, and Sarah slammed the door on her way out. Meanwhile, Molly had her hand down on the table as she could also be heard sobbing. Molly, I'm so sorry you had to hear Sarah say that to you, Bailey said while comforting her. Why would she have her call me a piece of shit? Molly said in a sorrowful tone. Is everything alright in there? I hope you guys weren't bothering Sarah, because I could see her running past me, Will said walking in. Billy then told Will that Sarah was yelling at them, and she also was close to saying something inappropriate and nasty to Molly. Will had a shocked look on his face after hearing it all. She did what? I'll have a talk with her when she's all the way calm, Will said. There's likely no way to calm her down, Zoe replied. It then showed the barn again, and Sarah took Scarlet out of her stall and proceeded to tell her she doesn't feel safe at Horseland anymore, and that they were getting out of here for now. By the time Sarah and Scarlet left, Aztec began questioning what was going on. Aztec, Sarah's still in a bad mood and doesn't feel safe, Calypso said to Aztec. Yeah, she just needs some time off, that's all, Shep said walking in. Suddenly Will took out to the barn and grabbed Jimber. It turns out that Will was going out to find Sarah. Shep began barking at Will, likely as a way telling him not to go. It's okay, Shep. I just need to see where Sarah's going, Will said to Shep. It then cut to the meadow where Sarah and Scarlet were, and Sarah parked her horse near a tree and sat down in the middle of the path. Tears began streaming down her face as she started crying again. This time her cries were the same cries she made in the Horseland episode Mosey. Will then found Sarah and Scarlet as he got off of Jimber and walked to her. Sarah, please listen to me. I know you're still upset, but we need to talk. This is pretty serious. Bailey tells me that you were yelling at the group and you even got close to calling Molly a nasty word. I'm requesting that once you come back to Horseland, you should issue an, Will's sentence was interrupted by Sarah standing up, turning around to face him. That's when something strange happened. Sarah's eyes began turning red. No turning red in reference intended, but it wasn't the Sonic Daddy XC way. She also had her pupils in the process. Another thing that happened was her breathing then sounded demonic. Sarah, something's wrong with your eyes, Will said. After he said that, Sarah let out a demonic scream that was quite loud for my ears. It lasted for about 5 seconds before Will began screaming in a scared manner. Come on, Jimber, we're getting out of here, Will shouted. Sarah then got on Scarlet and said in a demonic tone, Don't you dare run away from me, Will! You're going to be sorry for not leaving me alone! Meanwhile, the rest of Horseline Gang were in the middle of giving their horses a scrub. Suddenly they heard Will screaming and Jimber neighing. Will, are you okay? What's wrong? Bailey asked. Will said, Sarah has gone insane. She's no longer her normal self. Alma then told Will that it was probably a bad idea for him to go and find Sarah. Chloe and Zoe got some rakes out as weaponry, just in case if that was the only thing they saw. Out of nowhere, Sarah came back, and then she said in a demonic tone, Will, you've made a terrible mistake, and now you're going to regret it. Sarah took out a spear and stabbed Will in the eye, causing him to scream in agony. Everyone excluding Sarah and Will covered their ears, including mine. She then stabbed him in the heart, and then he was without a doubt dead. Why is Sarah doing this? She was always such a nice girl, Zoe asked. I don't know. Maybe we've gone too far, Bailey replied. Who's next? Sarah asked. The moment she asked that, everyone began running away from her. While Sarah began chasing at the rest of the gang, Shep could be seen talking to Teeny and Angora about how insane Sarah has become. Bailey ran into the house and demanded his parents to call 911. Mr. and Mrs. Handler got confused, and then Bailey said it was about Sarah killing Will. The parents gasped when they have heard about it, and they reached for the phone. But after Miss Handler dialed the number, the window in the kitchen suddenly broke. Sarah came in with a pocket knife. Hang up that phone now! Sarah shouted with her normal tone, still sounding mad. Miss Handler hung up the phone, and then she asked and said, Listen here, Sarah, whatever is your problem, killing someone just because something didn't go your way is not an excuse to do so. You're 12, and I see you as a psycho. Sarah took the pocket knife from earlier and slit open Bailey's mom's neck. While I was scared by this scene, I was rather confused on where Sarah got the weapons from. But anyways, Bailey screamed, Mom, no! Before Bailey let out his sadness, he saw Sarah going up the stairs. Sarah, we can explain this, Bailey said while going upstairs. Sarah then got a hold off of Mr. Handler and stabbed him through the heart, like she did with Will. Bailey got into his parents' bedroom, but he was already too late. It's too late, Bailey. Your parents are dead, and now you're going to be dead soon, Sarah said. No, wait! Bailey tried to finish his sentence, but he started to suffer the same fate as his mother did. 4 down, 4 more to go, Sarah said. Molly was in the barn on her knees, praying to God so she can go to heaven. Just then Sarah showed up again, and as soon as Molly saw her, she gasped. Sarah got a hold of her and grabbed her by the hair very hard. Sarah then began slamming Molly's head back and forth hard on a bench, which resulted in blood coming out of her face. It reminded me of that one scene from Halloween Ends where Corey, dressed as Michael Myers, kills a DJ at a radio station. She then got up and got a pair of scissors and cut off Molly's tongue. I was very grossed out by this scene. I paused the episode to go vomit in the toilet, so when I came back I unpaused it. It was Molly was officially dead. Sarah then began to go after Chloe and Zoe and Alma by getting a gun to go after them. Before she could take a shot at Chloe, who was standing while crying, police cars then showed up. Freeze, Sarah Whitney. You have been surrounded and you are under arrest, one of the officers in the car said. An officer then stepped out of the car with handcuffs in his hands, and he put it around Sarah's arms. It's okay, Stilton twins. We are safe from now. They're finally arresting Sarah, Alma said. Officer Sarah will be taken to court? Zoe asked. Yes, indeed, the police officer said. Sarah gasped at the point and said that it sounded like she was going to cry. Oh no, this won't be good. And then a scene involving the court session happened. The judge found Sarah guilty of 5 accounts of murder. He was also sentenced Sarah to 6 years in juvenile detention, and that her horse Scarlet was no longer hers. No, Your Honor, you can't do this to me. I have anger problems, Sarah said in a sorrowful tone. It's too late. If you hadn't murdered 5 people, then you wouldn't have suffered through this, the judge said. Sarah began crying really hard while shouting too many times before an officer laid his hands on her. It was already some reason the nightmare as Sarah woke up gasping. It turns out that Sarah was having a sleepover with the horse gang. Will woke up and noticed that Sarah was crying sorrowfully. "Sarah, what's wrong?" Will asked. "It was a horrible nightmare, Will. I was suffering through some anger problems, and when you guys were irritating me, and when you came to tell me something in the meadow, I grew demonic eyes and proceeded to kill everyone but Chloe, Zoe, and Alma. I got taken to court," Sarah said. The last scene then cuts to the outside of the Horseland house, and Shep walked into view again. Perhaps I should mention this was all a dream. I'm sorry," Shep said. I was still rather confused and terrified at the same time. The screen then faded to black and the credits played normal, with the font and the musical instrumental Horseland theme song was playing in the background. I took the disc out at one point and put it back in its case. For some reason I did have thoughts on smashing it, but my grandmother probably spent some good money on it, so I put the DVD in my collection. Well, this is my way of telling the story for a next Lost Horseland episode, so here's another one out there. But I'll tell you that when I feel like it. And that, my pretties, was Sarah's Anger, a Horseland creepypasta written by Jenny Foxworth. My final thoughts on this story? I personally could say that this story was good, but I do also have some negatives that I want to state about this story. So before I get to it, I want to put out, the author's note at the beginning. So I want to read this before I get started. This story may have some elements to anger management from a lost episode of Teletubbies. This story also contains a scene of strong language, references to murder. If you're under the age of 18 or perhaps sensitive, do not read the story. Viewer discretion is advised. Well, I could definitely say that the lost episode of Teletubbies, the anger management one, I don't even remember seeing that lost episode of Teletubbies. Maybe I might have come across it, but I probably just don't remember because, I've read so many creepypastas, lost episodes in fact, and some of them I have not even seen. It's just something I really want to say is that I've not seen any anger management related episodes to that. But I will definitely say that this story was definitely an interesting concept. But at the same time, there's a few problems with this story. And I am going to be completely honest with you, Jenny Foxworth. While the story, I do find it enjoyable. However, there are some things that I do wanted to say. Now, before I get on with the negative side, I'm going to go with the positive side of the story before I jump the shark and just, go through with the mistakes in the story. For one, I do really like the concept. I personally really liked it. I thought it was good. However, though, there are some things that I do have to say about that. Now, first of all, the grammar was good and it was readable. I was able to read this without any problem. However, there were a few times in the story that I didn't really think it was necessary, such as mentioning some creepypastas in the story. I think Sonic.exe was one of them, and I know that Teletubbies one was mentioned, and then the previous Lost episodes, they didn't really make the story scary. And maybe this one was supposed to be a troll pasta, but like I said, the other two were creepypastas that I liked, but mentioning a creepypasta in a creepypasta doesn't really work out. That's the one thing I could definitely say, is that it does not work out in the story. I've known this because I've seen it in other stories and it just doesn't work. But that is just my opinion. Now, the fact of Sarah, all of a sudden it goes in a bad mood and then she kills people, it kind of sounds cliched, but at the same time, I'm gonna say right now that I still thought this one was pretty good, although the House Sitting and Aftermath were good stories, but this one, it kind of got a little bit weirded out, if I can definitely put it at that. Now, if you're hearing some noises in the background, it's freezing rain, like where I'm at, it's kind of freezing raining, so if you're hearing that, that's just, hail hitting my window, so yeah, I do apologize for that. The grammar was readable. I was able to read through this without a problem. The sentence structure was really good. The storyline was excellent. I personally, well, even though the storyline did have cliches, and it did have a cliche plot line involving Sarah killing people, I mean, so many creepypastas have done that. Like, so many creepypastas have sat there and done that. And that's literally something I just wanted to make a statement on that. The story, honestly, was pretty messed up in a sense. But at the same time, I do want to say that while I do consider this story to be, maybe not the best, you still did your best to make this story a pretty good one. And the fact that it turns out to be a dream. So basically what Sarah had was like a nightmare. But I mean, the nightmare concept was at least interesting. I can definitely give it that. However, but when I'm saying however though, but I do really have to say some of the stuff that other creepypastas have done is also included in this story, and that kind of just brings it down. I'm not saying it brings it down entirely, because this is actually a pretty interesting story, but at the same time, I do need to say my own fair share of criticism with the story, but at least I'm being respectful about it, though. Well, I mean, the fact that, like, why would Sarah do this and, kill people? I mean, with her anger issues, I mean, if she was mentally unstable, maybe that could be believable, but there's no way she could be mentally unstable unless she was possessed or something. But like I said, this story, there's just some things I needed to point out that I didn't really care much about the story, but it's still pretty good. Like, with that being the case and that being said, I definitely have to say, but I could definitely say the story was actually quite interesting. But at the same time, there was just some issues with the story. And I keep having, losing my train of thought. I do apologize. That's kind of why you've seen some gaps there. But that's just what it is. Anyways, the story of its own self doesn't seem to be, in fact, it's not bad. But there is just some issues that I did not really care for the story, if that makes sense. But the story still is pretty interesting. So, I definitely have to say, the story may not be perfect, but at least it's definitely a pretty interesting one. But I'm kind of mixed when it comes to this story. I'm kind of mixed on this one, and that's just me being brutally honest. But anyways, with that being said and that being the case, I personally like this story. I thought it was pretty good. So anyways, with that being said and that being the case, I personally think this story is pretty good. It does have some little bit of, issues here and there, but I personally really like the story. So with that being the case and that being said, I personally do like this story. It's a fun one. Apologies for that. I had to blow on something, but that's okay. Now anyways, yeah. This story is not terrible, but it could have been better. Now, like I said, this is just simply my own personal opinion, and if you happen to disagree with me, that's perfectly fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions regards to these creepypastas. This is just simply my own personal thoughts. I'm going to give this story I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. It's not the best story in the world, but it's definitely not the terrible story. I've seen other stories that are not good, but this one is kind of like the weakest out of, House Sitting and even, The Aftermath. But this one was definitely not terrible. Not the best, but definitely not terrible. So I can definitely give it credit when credit is due. But it's still a pretty interesting story, Jenny Foxworth. You did a pretty good job. Although, I didn't really exactly like this as much as the other ones, but it's not terrible, though. I still like it, but there are still some issues with it. But despite that, I personally liked it. I personally still find it to be a pretty good story, and I personally liked it. So, with that being said and that being the case, yeah, what did you guys personally think of this story? Did you enjoy it? Did you not? Also, what have you done personally to help make this story a lot better? Feel free to leave me what you are thoughts down in the comments below. I'm sorry if I'm twisting my words around. But yeah, what did you guys personally think of this creepypasta? Did you enjoy it? Did you not? Also, what you have done personally to help make this story a lot better? Feel free to let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below, because I'd like to hear what you guys think. I'm the Lion Queen. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and if you're new to my channel, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you're new. Ring the bell for notifications to when I upload, so that way you guys will not miss an upload. And as always, please roll the outro. because I'm out.